Arthur Berry was an unusual thief. A jewel thief during the Roaring Twenties, Berry gained an international reputation as one of the most outstanding jewel thieves of all time. Berry managed his job very neatly, without a single killing or injury or bloodshed. Not only was he a very successful thief, but he was a connoisseur of the arts. Matter of fact, he was kind of a snob in that he wouldn't steal from just anybody. If you wanted to be one of his prospects, not only did you have to have money and jewels, but you had to be on the list of the top echelon of society. Over time, it became somewhat of a status symbol to be called upon and robbed by this gentleman thief. One night, Berry got caught, and he was shot 3 times. With bullets in his body and glass in his eyes and excruciating pain, he made the obvious statement, "I am never doing this again." Miraculously, he escaped, and he managed to stay out of prison for another 3 years. But then a jealous woman turned him in, and he got an 18-year sentence. When he got out, he was true to his word and did not return to a life as a jewel thief. He settled in a New England town where he became a model citizen, so much so that the local townspeople made him commander of their veterans group. Sooner or later, the word got out, though, that Arthur Berry, the world-famous jewel thief, was in their midst. Reporters came from all over to interview him, and they asked him lots of questions. But one young reporter got to the crux of the matter and asked the most penetrating question of all, as he said, "Mr. Berry, you stole from a lot of wealthy people during your time as a jewel thief. Do you remember who you stole the most from?" Without a hesitation, Berry responded, "That's easy. The person I stole the most from was Arthur Berry. I could have been a successful businessman. I could have been a baron of Wall Street. I could have contributed to society. But instead, I chose to be a thief and spend 2/3 of my adult life behind prison. The person I stole the most from was me." Are you stealing from yourself? If you are not living up to your fullest potential, if you're a pharmacist and you're not operating at the top of your license, you're stealing from yourself. You're stealing from your patients, you're stealing from your profession, and you're stealing from society. I challenge you today to hear the call that you hear hopefully everywhere, to strive to rise to practice at the top of your license. If you want to do that, where do you start? Can't do it without more time. So the first place to start is to improve the efficiency in your pharmacy. It may seem a little tired, but what's the number one way to improve the efficiency of your pharmacy? Drum roll. Anybody? Medication synchronization. MedSync is where you work on a patient's prescriptions days before they come in instead of hours or minutes. If you look at the workload in a pharmacy, it's these mountains and valleys, right? This time of, I'm so crazy busy, I don't know how in the world I'm going to do everything I got to do without making people mad. And then you have these valleys of not that much to do. What MedSync does is cut the top off those mountains, fills it into the valleys, and smooths out the workflow in your pharmacy. A 2014 Harvard study showed that 8% of pharmacies were doing MedSync. Today, almost 40% of Pioneer Rx pharmacies are doing medication synchronization. If you don't have at least 30% of your prescriptions on sync, put a lot of effort there. We had a recent prospect in the sales process who said, "I'm going to do that whole MedSync thing. It's a fad. Over the years, I've seen fads come and I've seen fads go." If you think MedSync is a fad, you might be the fad. Second, you can't do it alone. Brian Tracy tells the story of 2 men who came here from the old country on a ship. The ship got into the Atlantic, and it pitched, and it plunged, and up and down, and up and down. And one man ran to the other and said, the ship, it's breaking up. It's going to go down. And the other man looked at him calmly and said, what do we care? It's not our ship. There are a lot of people in pharmacy today that are looking at all the changes going, what do we care? It's not our ship. Today, that ship is CPSN. With CPSN, community pharmacists can negotiate and work together in clinically integrated networks that recognize pharmacists for their value. Together, you can combat the forces that want to drive pharmacy to a lowest cost per pill model of brainless activity. This is your ship. I will be as bold to say if CPSN does not survive, you don't survive. If you're not actively involved in CPSN, find out how today. Third, you can't do it without amazing technology. Many times you look in the world and the best has the best tools. Doesn't matter if this is Chris Froome's bike or Jordan Spieth's golf clubs or Jimmy Johnson's car. Matter of fact, in sports, sometimes there are tools that are so good that they're often considered unfair. Wouldn't you like to have that kind of super tool in your pharmacy? Place to start looking for those is NCPA. And a great place to start is Pioneer RX. Albert Einstein was teaching at Oxford in 1942 and had just administered a test to a senior physics class. With his teaching assistant, they were walking back across campus. The teacher assistant was carrying all the papers. And the teaching assistant said, Dr. Einstein, isn't this the same test that you gave last year? Dr. Einstein said, yeah. Well, Dr. Einstein, how can you give the same test to the same class 2 years in a row? Dr. Einstein said, well, that's easy. The answers have changed. Today, the answers in pharmacy are changing. You are going to have to change too. This means striving to work at the top of your license, to work at the top of your potential, to stop stealing from yourself, stop stealing from your patients, stop stealing from your profession, and stop stealing from society. In order to do that, you're going to have to free up some time. The number one way to do that is MedSync. Second, you can't do it alone. Get involved in CPSN. And last, you've got to have amazing technology. Albert Einstein, when giving his advice on being successful, gave us great advice as he said, strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value.